Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Wednesday, and that would ordinarily be Epic Comic Book Wednesday, where Michael K. Vaughan and I talk about some comic book subject that he chooses. But Michael K. Vaughan has stepped back from BookTube for a bit. As you may have seen on his own channel, he made a video about that. The rumor on 8chan is that he's having cosmetic surgery. And if you've watched his channel, you know that's going to be a mighty big job. No, I'm sure it's not that. But I didn't want to let the day go by without any comic book coverage at all. I can't do Epic Comic Book Wednesday because that's a team-up. So I thought I'd make another walk through my Longboxes. The two of you who watch these videos already know what Longboxes are, but who knows what space aliens will watch this in 2030 when they come to Earth in order to conquer it. So that it isn't a danger to the rest of the Federation, because Earth is under the control of one person and is viciously militaristic and xenophobic and horribly anti-science, except for the weapons it uses to hurt other people. To those aliens, I might explain that a long box is what it describes. It's a long white cardboard box that is perfectly proportioned so that you can put comic books in it, standing upright, and flip through them like that. Almost all serious comic book fans have long boxes. They have their comics in long boxes, and I have a few. I've had more of them than I do now at points in my life, but I still have a few of them left. And I just went through and grabbed some random comics. Some of them may have been in previous tours through my long boxes, but we can stand a little duplication. First up is Nexus by Mike Barron and Steve Rude from Madison, Wisconsin. This Nexus was an individual superhero-like creation of theirs. It's a guy who wears a skin-tight costume, but he's not really a superhero in the normal sense of the word. He's more of a science fiction version of a superhero that they made up, and they own the rights to him. He was never a Marvel character. He was never a DC character. And Nexus is superpowered. He is given superpowers by a weird alien and a mission, which is to kill mass murderers. Nexus is a murderer of mass murderers. And he has his own planet. He is a weird, outside-the-law figure on that world because he has the power to kill people. He has the power to kill anyone he wants. He's an energy version of Superman. It's very interestingly done, and the more Barron and Rude got a chance to deal with Nexus, to do an ongoing comic or to do individual Nexus specials or anything like that, the more they tooled around with their own world building. Always to interesting effect. Always. I wish there were a great big hardcover omnibus of Nexus. That would be wonderful. But Barron and Root had a Nexus run for a while, a long time, double-digit issues, well double-digit. I don't think that run ever got to 100. But it was a long time that Nexus was running. And then years and years passed, and they came back to Nexus for a mini-series of individual self-contained stories. Gorgeously done. Beautiful artwork, and also painted covers. I got all of those. I don't know if those have ever been collected in one volume, but they're really good. This is number 2 of 4 of that mini-series, with a beautiful painted cover there by Steve Rude, and also a painted back cover. There is Elvis Presley and a whole bunch of aliens in his band. He is in this. Pause for a siren. He is just rocking out hillbilly style in this future world, and this is just gorgeous interior cover artwork, just amazing. There's a story that runs through the 4 issues of this miniseries that I'm not all that up on. I haven't reread these things since I got them originally, which would be when? Am I going to be able to make out the year? 1995, so that's 30 years. But I should reread them. Nexus is always fun to reread. Then we have, this is a special double issue, issues 1 through 3, of another anti-hero comic book creation. Not exactly like Nexus, but closer than you might think. Created by Mark Millar. It has artwork by John Romita Jr. That's the reason that I got this, because I love John Romita Jr.'s artwork. This is Kick-Ass. Issues 1 through 3. Kick-Ass will be familiar to a lot of you because he had a movie, 2 movies. He was played by an actor who was drastically miscast. But the movie was fairly enjoyable, and the comic is about a kid who decides to become a superhero in the real world. And it's just chalked up to the eyeballs with the kind of quippy nihilism that when this came out, it was already firmly entrenched in comic books, in superhero comic books, and now it's completely taken over superhero comic books. Now it's twee nihilism, but it doesn't matter. The point is that it's not serious, and it's not supposed to be heroic at all. And this isn't. But it's got terrific John Romita Jr. artwork, which I just love. I mean, this guy could draw the phone book, and I would still read it. It's just terrific stuff. It's incredibly violent. I won't show you the violence, but it's incredibly violent. But the artwork's a joy, anyway, to watch. Then we'll move back a couple of decades to the great Frank Miller run on Daredevil. Frank Miller was the artist and the writer on Daredevil during a high point in the title. Daredevil is one of Marvel's lame-ass superheroes, one of their lamer superheroes. He is a normal guy who dresses in red spandex in order to fight crime. He doesn't carry a gun, but he does have super senses. He's blind, but he has super hearing, super touch, and a radar sense that allows him to see shapes and movement all around him. That I guess compensates to the radar sense plus his heightened senses brings him right back up to about normal. So he's just a guy who runs around punching people. Frank Miller took that concept and invested it with a whole bunch of cod mysticism and a little bit more of a backstory than the character had ever had. No one had really thought before Frank Miller to re-examine Daredevil as an origin story. And it worked. It absolutely worked. I don't like to admit that. I didn't like the character any more now than I did afterwards, but I never missed Miller's Daredevil when he was on the book. And one of the signature things that fans loved most was that he introduced a character called Elektra, who was a beautiful woman who was a college girlfriend of Matt Murdock, Daredevil, when he was in college. A time period in Matt Murdock's life that writers just completely ignored. And then she disappears from his life, and what we learn is that she apprentices herself with the Hand, a mysterious, horrible assassin organization, and they trained her to be a living weapon. And she returns, she comes back into Daredevil's life, and is murdered. Again, you'll know this from the movie. She's murdered by Bullseye, a supervillain of Daredevil's. And it breaks Daredevil's heart. And it broke the reader's heart, too. By the time she's killed, the reader had been introduced to her and already come to like her as a character, thinking she'd be around. Instead, she's killed in a fight with Bullseye. And Frank Miller knew perfectly well that in comic books, nobody's dead but Bucky and Uncle Ben. Even Bucky isn't dead anymore. He knew perfectly well that the idea was going to be that Elektra was not really dead. And that comic book fans would not believe that she was really dead, but also that maybe comic book characters would not believe she was really dead. How many times, as Miller said in interviews at the time, back in the 80s when this was coming out, how many times has Matt Murdock seen someone that he thought was dead come back to life? Wouldn't his natural reaction be that his dead girlfriend is actually alive? Somehow alive. And he does think that. This is the issue. It's Daredevil number 182. And it starts just as plain as it can. She's alive! That's Matt Murdock. And he's not in character. He's just in bed. And he is certain that Elektra is alive. Look at that beautiful artwork. God, and is it any wonder that in the 80s when this stuff was coming out, none of us missed an issue? It's no wonder at all. He decides to go out into the world. He wants to talk to the underworld. He wants to talk to the Kingpin, who hired Bullseye, and who maybe knows something about Elektra's death. We get little intervals that don't have anything to do with that, and one of those intervals involves the Punisher, who is in prison and is accosted by bad guys and trashes them in prison. He's wearing nothing. He's just using a towel. But we're mainly looking at Daredevil roughing people up in order to get some answers about Elektra's fate. And it goes all throughout the issue. He confronts the Kingpin. Doesn't fight him, but he confronts him. And then finally, at the end of the issue, I can't believe that Miller did this. I still can't believe that he did this. At the end of the issue, Miller does what he must have hated the convention that characters don't die in comic books, that death isn't real. He must have hated that convention. Because he, as well he should, it completely undermines drama if your characters aren't dead and aren't killable. And at the end of the issue, he has Matt Murdock go to the cemetery and dig up Elektra. and she's dead. He digs up her body, and she's dead. She's there, and she's dead. It's not a duplicate. His senses would know that, and she's not alive. Just amazing. And it goes on from there. The story of Elektra is not done there, despite that issue. It goes on from there. Just amazing stuff. And then we'll go back even further than Daredevil 182. We'll go back to Batman. This is Batman 259. The 100-page giant issue of Batman. All the DC Comics in the 70s at one point did 100-page issues where you get new material, but also reprint material scattered throughout a big square-bound issue. These were a lot more expensive, but I got them all. When I saw them, I got them all. I realized right away that I was going to love these issues. This is this issue of Batman. The main story is there is the Shadow. The old pulp character, the Shadow, is on the cover of this magazine. But somewhere here in this picture is Batman. Can you find him? Could it be little boy Bruce Wayne? And this has Irv Novick artwork, but it's Dick Giordano doing the inking, I think. Irv Novick's artwork is not always that good, but Dick Giordano can make anybody look good. Yeah, it's Dick Giordano doing the inking here, and we have a bank heist happening, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, appears this figure, the Shadow, and they're not hitting him, but he's hitting them. And a nurse and her young boy Charge fall to the floor as the bullets are flying, and the young boy Charge is Bruce Wayne, who develops a kind of trauma about guns. And that is what this issue is. This issue is Batman getting over his drama about guns and also meeting the Shadow. How amazing. And then you also get reprints of older Batman comics, which is a lot of fun. But this issue, if I remember correctly, this issue also had something new that was wonderful. It wasn't always reprints. I don't know, actually, if the thing I'm thinking of is in here. Yeah, look at this. This is what I'm talking about. All kinds of 100-page issues. I think I had almost all of these. I didn't have the romance one, and I didn't have the dumb, unexpected one, but I think I had everything else. But I believe that one of the things in here is also new. You get reprints of Batman issues from all over here, from just every era of Batman. No, I guess not. Okay, no, these are all Batman reprints. Okay, great. And the front issue, the front story in which Batman meets the Shadow. How wonderful is that? For some reason, Denny O'Neil was able, or whoever did this, was able to get away with that. I don't think they ever did it for Doc Savage. I don't know if maybe that copyright was better protected. When Michael K. Vaughan returns, he will be able to tell me why that is, that Doc Savage never appears in a DC Comics, but the Shadow does. Then we'll go back to, we did Dark Horse for Nexus. We'll go back to another non-Marvel and DC character, another non-Marvel and DC company. This is the writer and artist Eric Larson, who came up with a character called the Savage Dragon, who's found fully grown in a field of fire. He's green-skinned. He's got a big Godzilla-type fin running across the top of his head. Doesn't grow any hair on his head, and he is almost invulnerable and super strong. And he's raised by the cops, so they make him a cop. And Eric Larson had a huge run on Savage Dragon. I'm not 100% sure that Eric Larson isn't still doing Savage Dragon. I'm not 100% sure of that. There's a lot like what's his name's Cerberus, the Aardvark. where you don't know if it's actually stopped, if the series actually stopped. But for a little bit, Eric Larson gave up the artwork chores to Jim Lee. And this is one of those issues. So here you're getting a Savage Dragon. That's the Savage Dragon. It doesn't look anything like Eric Larson's version of the character. I wonder if... we can get you very clear visuals. It's great Jim Lee artwork. Just fantastic. But I wonder if this issue has any picture of Eric Larson's dragon so that you can see the difference. Okay, there he is. There he is. He's just a superpowered cop. That's what he is. What would you do? If you're one of the only superpowered beings in the world, you would be a cop. No. There are no pictures of Eric Larson's Savage Dragon in this issue. I think this was a 4-issue storyline. I have them all. Whereas I don't think I have any Eric Larson Savage Dragon. I don't think I have any of them at all. No collections, no individual issues. I got Savage Dragon #1. I think I did. And also no ebooks. I don't think I have any other Savage Dragon except this series, which ironically enough is not with his artwork. Okay, then we have a 3-part story that appeared in Marvel Comics at one point in Marvel Comics about 30 years ago. Thor, one of the founding members of the Avengers, decided to embrace the whole God part of God of Thunder and become an object of actual worship on Earth again. And to start taking partisan sides, not as a superhero, but as a religious leader. Which, of course, brings him into conflict with the whole rest of the world, including the Avengers. And in these issues, these are Alan Davis artwork, just fantastic Alan Davis artwork. Thor confronts first Iron Man and then Captain America. And it's just terrific stuff. Alan Davis's artwork is just terrific. And it ends up on a bittersweet note because things are not resolved neatly. The resolution of this storyline where Thor is a god on Earth and not just a superhero with his friends anymore in the Avengers, I don't quite remember where or when that storyline was resolved. Somehow it was. I'm pretty sure it wasn't in this issue because the 3 issues here ends with a total impasse. Captain America and Iron Man have not been able to make any progress with Thor. They can't stop him. But they can't bring him around to being an Avenger again either. So I remember the final panel is a shattered old photograph of Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor all together from happier days. I don't remember how that storyline was resolved. But while we're with Thor, we'll stick with Thor, only we'll go back 40 years to Thor number 236. Look at that great Gil Kane cover, will you? Just look at that, how amazing it is. That is Crusher Creel. He is the Absorbing Man. He is given the power by Loki to take on the properties of anything that he touches. Loki gives him this power, but does not appear ever to have that power himself, nor to be able to give that power to anyone else. One Absorbing Man is able to give Thor, oftentimes, a run for his money, a serious run for his money, including in this issue, momentarily defeating Thor. So why aren't there 10 Absorbing Men? Why isn't Loki the Absorbing Man plus his own mystical powers? Instead, no, it's just the one guy. This issue also took place in a time when Thor's weird father, Odin, had put a spell of forgetfulness on himself and left Asgard and was just walking around the American Midwest, or Southwest, in bib overalls. Not really knowing who he is, really fancying a mortal woman named Judith. At one point, of course, the local roughs make trouble. And Odin, he doesn't remember who he is. He doesn't remember that he has mystical powers. But he is not only an Asgardian, but the king of the Asgardians. So he's much, much stronger than most of the superheroes in the Marvel Universe. I think at the time when this issue came out, Odin was ranked as being able to lift about 70 tons, which is, that's, a lot. That makes him far more powerful than most Marvel superheroes. And he slaps one of these thugs, and the thug, a very nice visual effect by John Buscema here, the thug goes flying through the window and across the whole of the store. he doesn't make any news for that or anything. He's just trying to grapple with his own identity. But in the course of the issue, Thor has recovered. The Absorbing Man knocked him out, but he has recovered, and he attacks Crusher Creel again. His hammer returns to his hand. There's a great exchange. The Absorbing Man says, ain't you learned your lesson, Goldilocks? I beat you, remember? What do I gotta do? Put you in your grave before you give in? And Thor says, only in death will I surrender. And not even then, if Hela be merciful. Not even then. Terrific stuff. Okay, then we'll bounce back a little bit earlier. This is World's Finest. Not to be confused with our team-up between Michael K. Vaughan and myself, but forever and ever, DC Comics had a magazine called World's Finest, starring Batman and Superman in monthly adventures. I mean, it started out as starring Superman and Batman in separate adventures, but then fans were vocal. They wanted their favorite heroes to team up. So you got World's Finest every month. And this has got to be from the 1980s. 1980 itself. Who is the writer here? Denny O'Neil. The artist is Rich Buckler. I mentioned Rich Buckler in last week's Epic Comic Book Wednesday as an artist who often mimics the penciling style of other artists rather than develop one of his own. He'll just explicitly mimic the panel arrangements of someone like Jack Kirby. In this issue, this is World's Finest number 263. And in this issue, we've got a Ross Andru cover here. But the artwork, the main artwork is by Rich Buckler, and I think he's imitating Neil Adams. Early Neil Adams. I want to this is, it looks like at least Batman and Superman on the surface, but I want to point out, that's not going to work for punching somebody. I don't know what this is, but that's not going to work as your position either before or after you punch somebody. But it turns out that these two are not Superman and Batman. They are young boys. They are teenagers. And we see that Superman and Batman, the genuine items, are running a computer simulation of what it would be like if they had sons. Super sons. A computer simulation of what those super sons would be like. But as you know from my last stroll through my Longboxes, a decade before this issue came out, there was a string of issues in which we see a what-if story of what if Superman and Batman had teenage sons. They have an identity crisis, a generation gap, you don't understand me, man, all that sort of thing. And then those issues went away, and no one thought anything about it. They were just imaginary issues, that's all. In the beginning of this issue, we learn what those stories were. They were a computer simulation that Batman and Superman were running. Of course, they weren't a computer simulation when those original issues were being written and published, and I was buying them on the newsstand because there were no computers. But now there are. Now you can imagine the science fiction in which Superman and Batman would make a computer simulation of what it would be like if they had sons. And they think that's just fun. Just a fun afternoon playing essentially superhero video games. We imagined what this would be like, and we ran him through a simulation in which they face the old Captain Marvel villain, Dr. Savannah. Great, fun. They leave. Superman and Batman leave Superman's Fortress of Solitude. But something is happening. A stray bit of radioactivity makes the program come to life, and the Super Sons are suddenly real in the world. Which is causing lots of chaos for the world. They can't be alive in the world. They are disrupting the very fabric of reality. This is when Batman meets his son. And he has a classic Batman reaction. He doesn't say anything. He just has to go and think. He has to go and think about it. The world is all of a sudden tearing itself apart at the seams, and it's because of these Super Sons. It's because, what does Batman say? Wherever these kids went, something disastrous soon happened. I haven't gotten the why of it. And Superman says, simple and grim. They project a new form of radiation waves that flaws in whatever it touch. Then the flaws are increased. So minute problems in the tundra, outside buildings, become major problems. Next, disaster. And the solution is obvious. They have to go back into the disintegration pit where they came from. They're not real, but they are. They are real. Superman says you have to go back into the disintegration pit. And they say, how can you tell us to die? We're your sons. Batman says, with all my heart, I wish that were true. And Superman says, but it isn't. Your creations of my computer and stray molecules from the pit. And the boys don't believe it. They think, what is this? How do we know that you're not false? How do we know that any of this is true, this story of us being computer simulations? And Batman says, well, it's simple. I have a simple question. Who are your mothers? And they don't know. Because, of course, Batman and Superman never programmed that detail in, so the boys don't know, but they would know. If they were real, they would know. So they decide just to leave, just to jump into oblivion. What does one of them say to the other? Care to join me in a little disintegration? And that's the end. A very bittersweet gut punch of a story, especially for those of us who had read those original stories. That was really, really tough. But this issue of World's Finest is larger. It's not square bound. But it is a larger issue, but it doesn't have reprints. Instead, it has all new adventures of a whole bunch of backup Superman or DC characters. And the one that I love, the one that I wish that more could have been done with it, is one of my favorite superheroes of all time, Captain Marvel Jr. Not Captain Marvel himself, the big red cheese, but Captain Marvel Jr., Freddie Freeman, who, when he says his magic word, transforms not into an older man like Billy Batson does, but into a superpowered version of himself. I love Captain Marvel Jr. I love his adventures. I don't know what DC has done with him now. I'm assuming, since it's 2024, that he is a black lesbian. I don't know how that would work, but I'm not going to bother to check. The adventures that he had during World War II and shortly afterward, wonderful, wonderful stuff. And in this issue, Don Newton, who was a great comic book artist, he was taken long before his time. He should still... I wish that we'd had 25 more years of his artwork, getting better and better all the time. And what I wouldn't have given for... He does an original story of Captain Marvel Jr., and it's wonderful. What I wouldn't give if we'd been able to have maybe a Captain Marvel Jr. ongoing with his artwork. But no, 'twas not to be. So I have this and a few other examples of it. And then we can wrap up the 30-minute stroll through my long boxes the way we did the last one, with a Savage Sword of Conan. This was the larger black and white Conan magazine to go along with Conan the Barbarian, the full-color Marvel comic book that was running at the time. Conan was so popular that the powers that be at Marvel Comics thought he might support a magazine in addition to a comic book, and he did for a long time. It was written by Roy Thomas, and the artwork was mostly, at the beginning, by John Buscema, who was also doing the artwork on Conan the Barbarian. And boy, oh boy, was the Savage Sword of Conan, that black and white magazine. Boy, oh boy, was it good. Oh my. Oftentimes, I hate to say it, it's blasphemous, but oftentimes it was not only better than that month's issue of Conan the Barbarian, but better than anything that I got on the newsstand. Just big, beautiful, black and white pages of artwork. And I have Savage Sword of Conan here, number 24, which once again has... an Earl Norem cover there. I wish I had a big art book of all the Earl Norem's artwork. Covers for comic books and also covers for novels, dime novels and whatnot. I don't know if such a book exists. Might be a very small press that did such a thing, but I would love it if his artwork collected. It is so good. And this is arguably the most famous Conan story of them all, The Tower of the Elephant. Which was famously done in Conan the Barbarian. Roy Thomas wrote this story. It was a Robert E. Howard story in which Conan attempts to scale an unscalable tower and steal an amazing treasure from a wizard, and gets embroiled in a mystical duel between that wizard and his tortured longtime enemy. It shouldn't be a great story. It shouldn't work at all. Conan does not succeed in stealing anything, and he never comes to understand the duel in which he has blundered. It shouldn't be satisfying narratively at all, and yet it's magic, pure magic. And for Conan the Barbarian number 4, Roy Thomas adapted The Tower of the Elephant with artwork by Barry Windsor Smith. I don't remember if he was going by Barry Windsor Smith at the time. It might have still been Barry Smith. He still looked like a BG, either way. But years later, Roy Thomas decided he would adapt the story of Tower of the Elephant again in Savage Sword of Conan. He has much more real estate here, much more room to tell more of that story here, and a different artist. He has John Buscema here doing the artwork with Alfredo Alcala inks. Yes? Is that right? Yeah, Alfredo Alcala is inking the artwork. The artwork here is absolutely great. I myself think that it's better artwork than Conan the Barbarian #4. It's a terrific story, though, either way. And it fills almost the whole of this issue. There's almost nothing else. We have a backup feature. Oh, okay. Well, we have a few photographs from the Society for Creative Anachronisms. But we also have a backup story that is just setting a Robert E. Howard poem to artwork. Really, really neat stuff, but no other characters. We have just the long story of the Tower of the Elephant, and a double-page letter column, and that poem set to artwork, and that's it. Aside from a little story about the Conan creators going to a Renaissance fair festival of one kind or another. But there you go. That will end our stroll through my long box. Is another issue of Savage Sword of Conan. You can't go wrong with these early issues of Savage Sword of Conan. You can't go wrong. So there you go. That was a stroll through my long boxes. We will keep doing this. We'll keep the home fire burning for Michael K. Vaughan to return to BookTube. And so if he's not back by next week, we'll do this again next Wednesday. So I'll see you then. Thank you, BookTube.